The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you would like to just check us out, it's very simple, www.xzbn.net, and that will give you all the other fine programming that is available to you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is Jonathan Whitcomb. He is a cryptozoologist. Now, while viewing an expedition video by Paul Nation, he noticed a high level of credibility in the testimonies of eyewitnesses of what is called the ropen of Umboi Island in Papua New Guinea. He then began and became involved in living-pterosaur investigations, exploring the part of Umboi Island in 2004. Joining me now to tell us more about this fascinating story is Jonathan Whitcomb. And Jonathan, welcome to the X Zone.
Oh, thank you very much, Rob. Great to be here.
Jonathan, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in investigating these flying reptiles.
Yes, well, around 2003, I learned about sighting reports in South America, and as I followed up on that, tried to get information, I got in touch with Paul Nation of Texas, and he had been there on an expedition, and more than once, in fact, and that's how I got fascinated. I was a forensic videographer specializing in legal video for attorney firms in Southern California mostly, and I recognized that these natives were telling the truth. They weren't making up fantastic stories, they were just saying what they saw, and so I got fascinated, and I eventually became so involved that I led my own expedition the next year in 2004.
What was the truth that the natives were telling you that, you recognized as a professional videographer, forensic videographer, that they were telling the truth, but what was it that they saw, and what was the truth that they were telling you?
Well, part of it was that they led me to believe that they were very honest, was that there was no fantastic stories. They weren't reciting their legends or their superstitions. They just said, like, well, I saw this light fly at night, and it was going like that. We call it a ropen, and most of them were like that. And then there was an exception where you have somebody that actually sees something that could have been a pterosaur, and that exception was a teenage boy named Gideon Coral, who I was very fortunate to be able to interview in 2004 when I was exploring.
So what was it that these natives saw at night?
Well, it's a glow. It generally lasts about maybe 5-6 seconds around then, that time. And it goes from either one mountain to another or from a mountain to the coast or back again.
Right.
And I got some statistics when I came back, and I wrote a scientific paper in a peer-reviewed journal, and it showed that it's not a huge, strong evidence, but it does suggest that since the light is seen more going from a mountain to the reefs early at night, and then late at night is seen more often going from the coast inland toward the mountains, it does suggest that it is a flying creature that is eating fish or other seafood on the reefs at night.
What does this flying creature look like?
Well, when I interviewed Gideon, he said it had a a very long tail. I asked him, and I was videotaping this while I was doing it. I asked him, how long is the tail? And he looked away from me down at the ground, looked back and forth at the ground, as if he was trying to imagine what it was like. And then he looked right back at me, he looked right straight in my eyes and said, 7 meter, which is 7 meters at 23 feet. And he had no hesitancy in that. So this is a very large creature that they have on Ropens on Umboi Island.
So have you yourself ever seen one of these creatures?
Up until now, I've never had a sighting that was clear enough that I could say it was probably a living pterosaur. I have seen a couple things over the years that suggest a possibility, but I don't mention them much because there's just too much possibility of them being other things. But I do interview people from all over the world, and that's where I get my conviction that these are real animals. There's no hoaxing involved or misidentifications.
Have you ever seen any skeletal remains or any fossils to further corroborate the claims of these people who say they have actually seen one of these reptiles, dinosaurs?
No, I haven't seen anything like that. I have analyzed for some time, especially last year, a photograph that appears to be around the middle of the 19th century or the 1860s, 1870s of an apparent pterosaur, very large. And I did an analysis in conjunction with analysis done by a physicist in California, and we both independently concluded that the photograph is genuine.
Have any of the members of the established scientific community ever given you a verification that this is actually a prehistoric or a creature that has yet to been discovered?
We seem to be a ways away from that. This is still well within the boundaries of cryptozoology. We rely mainly on eyewitnesses. We have scientists who not only support us, but they actually have witnessed it occasionally. One man in Perth, Australia, who had an incredible sighting. He was working in the scientific field at the time. He's retired now, I'm sure.
Right.
But that was in 1997 in Perth, Australia. And we have more recent sightings where the eyewitnesses are credible, either working in science or in professional positions where they wouldn't dare perpetrate a hoax, how they could injure their professional life.
Here we are in the year 2018 with all this modern technology at our fingertips. Are there any videos of this flying reptile? Are there any photos, recent photos?
Well, yeah, we have a video footage in North Carolina from Raleigh, North Carolina, from just last year. But unfortunately, I suspect it was probably a real pterosaur, but unfortunately it was taken by a lady who's working in the veterinary field, and she was in a bus, and it was going the wrong way, and it's too far away to really say. It's not something we can really say is very solid evidence for it, because it's just not good enough.
I know for a fact there are model and hobby shops that were selling model pterodactyl kits that actually flew remote control. So
we always have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Be careful. The thing is, the sighting reports in general, they go back into the years and decades and centuries in a way that leads us just to determine that there's not too much misidentification from remote control. I mean, if you go to individual sighting report, of course, it's different. You have to look at each sighting report in itself and see what's credibility in terms of honesty credibility and misidentification credibility. Those are two different issues in credibility. But in general, the sightings go back in history in a way that suggests that they're really, in general, these are real animals. For example, we go right back to 1944 and on the mainland of New Guinea, where Dwayne Hodgkinson was a soldier for the American forces, and his description of this huge pterodactyl, as he called it, and obviously in 1944 there would be no, model pterodactyl flying around that's the size of an airplane,
How about a kite?
Kite, well, not where he was in the jungle, in a remote area. Nobody'd be flying a kite the size of a Piper Tri-Pacer airplane. But you mean in general, this situation?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a possibility for a particular sighting, perhaps. But the general overview of what happens with the sighting suggests that these are not that kind of sighting. For example, let's just give a few examples. In Antwerp, Ohio, a few years ago, the eyewitness said he saw what looked like a pterodactyl 2 years in a row in the middle of the summer, both times, flying over the Maumee River in Antwerp, Ohio. And both times, or at least one time especially, he saw it was chasing sparrows or some other bird. He used to call them sparrows that flew over the bridge. And he saw one time this pterodactyl, as he called it, with a long tail, actually catch the sparrow in its mouth while it flew over the bridge. That's obviously not a kite. All
right, Jonathan, stand by. We've got to take a commercial break. Exonation Jonathan Whitcomb is our guest of this hour. His website is www.jonathanwhitcomb.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and iHeartRadio. And on the X Zone channel on Simul TV. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV. Plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and for all the programming available to you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Our guest this hour is cryptozoologist and author Jonathan Whitcomb. Jonathan, with all the... Let me back up a minute here. So the sightings of these reptiles, flying reptiles, or pterosaurs, are seen worldwide?
Yes, I've interviewed eyewitnesses from 5 continents directly. You know, the eyewitnesses themselves. I'm not dealing usually with indirect kind of things. I communicate with eyewitnesses directly, and there's certain things that fall into place with correlating with each other that are from eyewitnesses from different countries, different cultures, different languages, different belief systems and backgrounds that correlate, and that's convinced me for sure that these are real animals.
What kind of correlation, sir?
Well, for example, I'll give you a common type, which is seen worldwide. Featherless flying creature, usually fairly large, long tail, often described with a flange at the end of the tail. They use terms like diamond shape or triangle or that sort of thing. There's something at the end of the tail. And sometimes they describe a long neck. Sometimes they describe a particular type of head crest, and this falls into place a number of times where it's sort of like a long cone sticking out parallel to the beak, but sticking out the opposite direction behind the head. Now, pterosaur fossils have a great variety of head crests. So what we have here is a survival of a particular type of pterosaur that's very specific, and it's just apparently dominating a lot of in a lot of ways that where pterosaurs live around the world.
How come we don't hear any about this in the media, sir?
Well, we do sometimes. The problem we have in Western countries, they have to differentiate, by being different countries and different cultures. In the West, like the United States, Canada, and many European countries. But the problem is it's just taken for granted that all these type of animals became extinct many millions of years ago. And this has been in our culture for so long, for generations. I mean, I could show you things from a newspaper article in the late 19th century where they have several newspapers reporting a sighting in California, for example. And you can see that the cultural bias against that possibility of living pterodactyls is still there in at least one of those newspaper accounts. But we still have some occasional newspapers and other reports in the media.
So am I to understand, sir, that there are fossils of the pterosaurs?
Well, there are many fossils of pterosaurs. It's just that we don't have any that I know of that are precisely like this. In terms of it's a rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur with a cone-like head crest that grows very large. We have some rhamphorhynchoid pterosaurs, long-tailed pterosaurs, that do get large, but it doesn't have this type of head crest. And we have head crests in some pterosaurs that are like what is reported commonly, except they're not rhamphorhynchoids, they're a different type. So it's an unusual kind of what we call the ropen, a modern rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur, long-tailed pterosaur. The ropin is unusual from the perspective of a paleontologist who just knows about it from fossils. They think it's just too weird because it doesn't fit the fossils that they know so far. That doesn't mean that we won't have any discoveries in the future that show us this type of animal and fossils. It's just that right now, as far as I know, we don't have fossils exactly like this.
So it would seem that the pterosaur falls in the same category as the Loch Ness Monster. A lot of sightings, and Bigfoot.
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't studied the as much about the Loch Ness. I've been there before when I was young, but haven't studied it recently. I know there are a lot more sightings that I've heard of than are commonly reported in the media from Loch Ness.
Well, yeah, I can understand that because, the Loch Ness Monster is a cash cow for the Loch Ness area. So, of course, they'd want to keep the sightings in the news to ramp up, tourism.
Yeah, but what I mean is whenever you have a documentary, for example, that shows a Loch Ness creature, you only have a tiny fraction of the eyewitness account.
Right.
A tiny fraction, yeah.
Are there any references that you're aware of the pterosaur in mythology?
Well, yeah, it goes back into dragons. A few centuries ago, the word pterosaur didn't exist. It wasn't part of our language or any other language. It came about the time of the American Revolution, or late 1700s, as I recall. And people before them would just call flying, featherless, long-tailed creatures. They call them dragons. And they have, of course, that's an English word. They have whatever, depending on what language you're dealing with. But basically, we think of those as being dragon legends.
So are you saying, sir, or are you speculating, are you putting up the hypothesis that the legend of dragons flying dragons may actually be a fact?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I know that there's some of them, of course, are fictional, and when you have a real account of an actual event, and then things happen over a period of time, and things are changed in the records. So you do have accounts that, in a present form, would have obvious fictional characteristics in them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything about it was fictional at the time it happened to you.
Why isn't there more of a push by the members of the scientific community to do more expeditions in order to find the pterosaur?
Well, you have to look at how that could take place, and you see there's a huge problems. It has to start with a person, not just organization that suddenly a university decides to go out and search for living pterosaurs. It has to start with an individual, and when you do that, what are you going to do? One professor, a university, going to say, let's go out and look for living pterosaurs. How is he going to do that? How can he promote that?
Well, wouldn't he be able to promote it if, in fact, he did have proof?
Yeah, but generally the problems with traditional culture in universities, for example, is if you try something really weird that it's not going to be funded. Funding goes to things which are basically already accepted to a great level. In other words, it's something that if you make a documentary, that's that once you want to get funding for it, it has to be something that's already very popular in the belief systems of everybody involved.
But doesn't that come with getting the information out there and allowing the public to make up their own mind?
Well, I think that definitely that's what I'm trying to do for years. I've been working on this for 15 years, and my associates and I have been doing different things, trying different things, but it's a very difficult, challenging situation. Eyewitnesses, for example, I've learned over the years, and especially recent years, that the vast majority of eyewitnesses to these creatures, they never contact me. For example, there are very few exceptions. For example, I get an eyewitness report, say, from back east in the United States, and the person tells me about this sighting they had of a pterosaur, and they tell me, I mentioned it to my friend or relative, and they've seen it too, or they know somebody that's seen it. Well, none of those other people ever get in touch with me. I know that because of the detail. So I know that I'm only getting a tiny fraction of the actual sightings. And so it's people, and after I forgot your original question to let into that, but it's a challenging situation.
No, my question was that would it not be more advantageous to have evidence and have proof, and would it not be to the credit or to the likelihood of getting funding if the public was made more aware of this. It seems like you're in a catch-22 situation. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's very challenging. We do have a Rex Epayapi. He's a native in Papua New Guinea. He's now on an expedition on Umboi Island, the same place where I was years ago. And has a camera. He has fun. He did have fun. His money's run out by now. He's been there for many weeks, and it's just a challenging situation. They have it's a long story, but basically, when I left Umboi in 2004 to return to the United States, I came to a complete realization that that island only has one large ropen that is a permanent inhabitant of the island. In other words, a ropen is established as territory, and whatever other creatures of that species come to the island, it's generally more temporary for mating or for challenging the ropen that's there. So anybody going to Umboi, even if they're there for many weeks and even months, it's very difficult to find that particular animal in the deep jungles. And they're nocturnal animals, they don't come out in the daytime generally. It's very challenging.
All right, stand by, Jonathan. You and I have to take our news break. Exonation, Jonathan Whitcomb is our special guest. His website is www.jonathanwhitcomb.com. And we're talking about Jonathan's scientific paper, Reports of Living Pterosaurs in the Southwest Pacific, which was published in Creation Research Society's Quarterly, Volume 45, Number 3. Are you a skeptic or are you a believer? Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and Jonathan and I will be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Channel.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Jonathan Whitcomb is our special guest this hour, X-Zone Nation. He is an American writer, cryptozoologist, and we're talking about pterosaurs in America this hour here in the X-Zone. First of all, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. And where in the world are the most sightings of the pterosaurs taking place?
That's an excellent question, and it's a little bit complicated.
Okay.
By far the greatest number of reports that come to me directly from eyewitnesses, they come from the United States, generally the 48 contiguous states of the United States. But there's a reason for that people might not be aware of. My web pages are in English mostly. I have other languages mostly in English. And Americans are very commonly, they do searches online, and everybody almost has a computer and goes online. So the reason we get more reports from the United States is not that that's where the animals live, but that's where people live who have access to find me and find out that other people have sightings and to report to me.
But based on your research and the research of others outside of the United States, where would you say that the heaviest concentration of the pterosaurs are?
Well, it's a little speculative, at least a little. But I'll give you an example. On the declaration page for living pterosaurs, if anybody knows how to spell pterosaur, just let Google pterosaur declaration, and you'll get to the flyingcreature.com page. It lists a great deal of detail on where these sightings take place. Canada, for example, here's a list of 8 sighting reports.
Over how long a period, sir?
Let's see, this one was Edmonton, 2015, British Columbia, 2010, Brampton, Kitchener, Ontario, 1960, Ontario in 2016, Ontario near Detroit, 2012, Quebec, 1998 or 1999, Saskatchewan, 1983 for the Canada.
So we're looking at between 2010 and 2018.
Yeah, there are some in the 1990s, a couple in the 1990s, and one about 1960, but it varies a lot. So those are not all of the sightings, of course, in Canada. Those are just some of the better ones that I've found, and they're basically usually my own direct communication.
Now, one question I have for you, sir. In a city like Brampton, that is right on the outskirts of metropolitan Greater Toronto, how would only one person see this?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I said Brampton, the city of Brampton here in Ontario, is part of the Greater Toronto Area, or what we call the GTA.
Yes.
Millions of people live in that area.
Yeah, right.
How could only one person...
Like bat wings, long tail with a diamond shape at the tip.
Mm-hmm. So how come only one person would see it?
Well, that's the thing. It's not one person. It could be 1,000 persons, or probably not good view. I should clarify that. I don't think there would be 1,000 good sightings where 1,000 people got a good view of the animal, especially not that particular day. What happens is these are generally nocturnal animals, and it's rare that they come out in the daytime. And if it does, you might get a select group of people are just lucky enough that they get a good view of it and they actually look at it. What happens is that among those people that see it, a portion of them will search online to find out what's going on. What was that I saw?
Right.
It could be 100, for example, 100 in the Brampton area. Just say as a guess, just for example, 100 people will look it up and say, oh, there is people who do see these things. Oh, good. Then they forget about it and say, well, good, I'm not crazy for seeing something like that. And then there might be only one person that actually sends me an email.
Okay.
That's common. I can tell it's something like that because of the way that sighting reports get to me and how I know who else has seen something like that from the eyewitnesses who talk with me.
How would the pterosaur have originally gotten over to North America?
Well, I get that reporting. We usually think of this kind of animals that it could exist if it's in a remote part of the world, like a remote island, like Umboi Island, for example. And that's what I originally was thinking too when I was starting investigating. And my associates, Garth Gessman, David Wetzel, two other Americans that followed me a few weeks after my expedition, they also explored Umboi Island and had their own interviews and so on, and searches. Anyway, we generally had this idea that was common that, we need to go to this remote jungle island, and just search there till we find a living pterosaur. Well, as soon as we got back and I started publishing web pages on these things, I get all kinds of sighting reports coming to me, people that have seen them, not necessarily recently. Some of them are just, I saw one yesterday or I saw one last week, but some of them go back decades even, or a few years or even decades, and tell me the reports that they've seen in the United States. What it is they didn't just arrive. We have historical records that go back in the Ohio River area of the Paiva bird, which is probably a pterosaur, and how it attacked people and so on. We have similar reports in South America, this big bird, the big bat of Venezuela, and killing people, and so people had to get out there and kill the animal. Anyway, going back in history, we keep seeing these things all over the world. So I don't think they ever migrated here from some jungle somewhere. They've just always been here.
How come mainstream media would not carry this story? Like if somebody in Brampton, Ontario contacts a website about seeing this flying reptile, why would they not call the local media to see if anybody else had or make a report of it? People call the local media for UFO sightings. Why wouldn't they do the same for a flying reptile?
Yeah, well, they do. In fact, people do contact newspapers, and sometimes a person will contact a university, or some people can't call the police. It just doesn't do any good. They don't get anywhere that way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a person will contact a forest ranger type of professional, that kind of thing. It doesn't get anywhere there either. It's just that there's the only people that can really listen, open mind, are cryptozoologists who specialize in this narrow field of cryptozoology. And so we have a couple of newspapers in North Carolina just a few weeks ago that put articles out about sightings that seem to be going on in North Carolina, in particular Raleigh. And then we got those two newspapers that publish something on it.
So what do we know about the pterosaur? What do we know about its habits? What do we know about... Well, what do we know?
It gets a little complicated, and I have to tell you the truth, though, even though it can cause some people to be put off, but there's more than one species, and this is we have to take it in perspective. Generally, if you have a particular kind of animal on the Earth, generally it's not found in one species that has no relatives. Generally, it's one particular type of a general order of a type of animal. And it's the same with the eyewitness reports we get. Apparently there's two major types, a long-tailed and a short-tailed. And it's hard to say sometimes when somebody sees one, they're so shocked they might not look at the tail. So some of these reports, I don't know if it's the one type or the other. It just seems to be a pterosaur. The person is so shocked. So it's difficult. They are nocturnal, though, and they're not commonplace. Obviously, we would have them discovered long ago if they're commonplace. We would capture them by now. But they're not commonplace. They're not necessarily very rare, but especially the larger ones, there are enough of them that they can be a danger to humans sometimes. They can be dangerous, especially in certain places like a certain area of British Columbia. Sure. They can be dangerous, apparently, to people. But generally, they're not.
You know, I found, my producer found online for me the report from Brampton, Ontario, going back to November the 1st, 2004 at 8 p.m. in the evening. And I'm looking at this saying, could be a misidentification of a hawk or a large bird of prey, because this is a quote from the report. The main witness watched astonished as he thought that it looked like a miniature pterodactyl. It had a wingspan of about 4 feet. It was gray in color and did not appear to have any feathers. How often are these misidentifications?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. See, I try to approach this scientifically, and I'll tell you what happens. Each sighting, if you ever look up the phrase apparent pterosaur, APPARNT, pterosaur, you'll find the search results will have my web pages dominating over anything else on the first page of Google, second page of Google, because they recognize that when you're dealing with one sighting, there is a possibility that there is a misidentification or something like that. There's a possibility. What I deal with is the overall case where it's practically impossible for all of these to be misidentifications. For example, this particular one, Brampton, you said it was what size? It was kind of a...
Had a wingspan of 4 feet.
4 feet, yeah. Well, let's look right here, okay? I have here a list of the wingspan estimates. Of course, these are estimates, which can be off, of course. They're just human estimates. But I see 4 examples of 4 feet, 4 examples of 5 feet, 4 examples of 6 feet, 2 from 7 feet. This is a common reporting. This is a total of, I think, 74 reports that have an estimated wingspan.
All right, listen, we've got to take our final break, Jonathan. Please stand by. When we come back, let's talk more about this. Exonation Jonathan Whitcomb is our special guest, and we're talking about pterosaurs this hour, flying reptiles, also known in earlier days as dragons. If you'd like to find out more information about Jonathan, visit his website, www.jonathanwhitcomb.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and Jonathan and I will be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Jonathan Whitcomb is my guest. His website is www.jonathanwhitcomb.com. He is an American writer and cryptozoologist. Before we went to the break, Jonathan, you were giving me some indication about the sizes of the wingspans of alleged sightings of pterosaurs. So please continue.
Yeah, so I'll tell you where this comes from.
Okay.
These are 74. Let me double check that. 74 out of 128 sighting reports that I felt were more credible and should have been analyzed, and I did analyze them. At the end of 2012 and early in 2013, I published my findings and so on. But these 74 eyewitness wingspan estimates range anywhere from less than 2 feet up to 46 feet.
Wow.
The interesting thing I found was was this, is it's a very continuous, even grading all the way up here. In other words, if there were a significant number of, for example, misidentification of birds, you would have some kind of bump in the statistics for bird sizes. There's nothing like that.
All right, but isn't it
continuous?
Isn't it true that the California condor has a wingspan of 9 feet, and then we go down to eagles? They have a wingspan up to 7.5 feet. Buzzards, 4.5 feet. Hawks, 4.5 feet. So we go down the list, and to me, this kind of puts the misidentification possibility number a lot higher than the credible sightings.
Well, you have to remember that when you're dealing with them, there's two things you're dealing with: the overall data, of course, which I'd like to talk about more, but also the individual descriptions, which have a featherless appearance. For example, no primary feathers is one thing I get sometimes. No primary feathers, featherless appearance. It flies differently than the birds. Some of the people, eyewitnesses, actually know the common birds of their area. They know what the hawks and eagles and blue herons and so on look like.
I agree, but if there's a bird in the area that they're unaware of, a misidentification could happen.
Well, you'd have to look at the individual sighting report and see that probability. But generally, when you look at the statistics, it's not just eagle sizes. See, for example, you have 4 at 9 feet, 4 at 10 feet, 1 10.5 feet, 2 11, 2 12, there's here 12.5, 13, 13, 13, 13, 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 17, 18, 20, 20, 20, 20.
But my question, sir, is at this point, hearing all these statistics, how did the person making the report, how were they able to properly estimate the size of the wingspan? Were they using binoculars in order to say, well, the object did not have any feathers? Like there's so many variables here.
Well, we need to go to individual reports to get to that. For example, a sighting a few years ago in Lakewood, California, not too far from where I lived at the time. I live in Utah now. There's much more life in California. This sighting, when the eyewitness went out and looked at it, it's the middle of the day, no obstruction to her view. The distance from the animal's end of the tail to her nose was I don't know, it was just a matter of feet. It was just very close, a few feet away, and she got a very good look at it. And by the way, about wingspans, though, we have to remember that kind of guess is not helped too much by by binoculars, because what you need is a reference, and that's a problem. When people are estimating, sometimes it's when the bird is flying in the air. Those estimates can be more off than the ones where they're flying close to that. For example, in near the University of Irvine in California, California State University, Irvine, that sighting a few years ago, the creature flew just low over the road, Campus Drive, and there was a long tail, and the eyewitness saw that the creature's length from the end of the beak to the end of the tail was pretty close to the same thing as the width of the road. It was right in front of him. I went over and I walked it off myself. I paced it off. It's 30 feet. So this not a 30-foot-long eagle with a long tail and no feathers.
And what time of day was that sighting, sir?
That one, it was in the daytime. It was in clear daylight. It was not anything.
Wow.
I don't remember the time, but I'm sure it was daytime.
Is that a populated part of California where the sighting took place?
Well, some of it is. That particular exact location is between a marshy area that's fenced off on one side and then a nature reserve on the other, where occasionally you do have people walking through there. But, again, it's difficult. The person that reported that, I have to say, he's a professional. I can't say exactly what he is because there's privacy reasons. He doesn't want anybody to know who he is, but he's either a medical doctor, a policeman, or a lawyer, one of those three. And he reported this to me under strictest confidence that his name would not get out, because it does look absolutely crazy that anything like this could possibly be alive.
So how do we know it is alive?
Well, there's different people in different parts of the world describe similar things. For example, the couple in Perth, Australia, that was also very large. The man he worked in the scientific field at the time. He estimated that the wingspan is between 30 feet and 50 feet.
Right.
And his natural instinct for trying to estimate was more for 50 feet, but he's trying to find some way to make it 30 feet because it just is so incredible. He and his wife were just shocked. And she was ridiculed when she publicized and tried to get people to know about this. So anything that large, if it's alive, can easily kill people. And we have reports of people being attacked in British Columbia, Papua New Guinea, Africa. It does happen. Now, the bigger ones are not as common. But what happens is if you have a small one, people don't pay attention. They don't even look at it. I think it's a bird. They don't even turn their head. And so the smaller ones are more common, but they're just not reported so much.
So someone was attacked in British Columbia by one of these flying dragons?
Well, more than once. Yeah.
Really?
I'll tell you the source for that, and to get more information about that. I've published quite a few books. 4 of them are now available now, but this particular book was written by Bird from Hell. I have the 2nd edition. This is about those big pterodactyl attacks in British Columbia. It's by Gerald McIsaac, and he reports the local people there, I don't know what you call them, the people, originally the natives of that area in upper northern British Columbia.
I see.
They have legends of these. They just say, don't go out at night, and they just tell everybody, don't go out at night, whatever you do.
Oh, I see. So this is nothing that is recent then.
Oh, it's going on recently. Yeah, I mean it was a few years ago. We had a girl that she wasn't at that particular time. She wasn't attacked, but she encountered one of these things accidentally, and she was running and trying to scare off the boys that she thought were teasing her, and she encountered this thing at night and was yelling, and making noise, and it scared the creature, and it let off this kind of a vapor. She called it a smoke, a vapor out of its mouth, and then flew away. And I think this could be related to some of the dragon legends we have. I have other reports of this kind of thing, kind of a mist or a vapor that's emitted. It can be used for self-defense, but it also can be used possibly for subduing prey. I think that's part of where we get the idea of fire-breathing dragons, is from that smoke-like substance that they emit from their mouths.
Jonathan, how can people find out more about you?
Well, it's hard to miss me if you search online. I've written over 1,000 web pages and blog posts. Some of them, I can't keep them all up because there's just too many for me to keep updating. And when I first started writing them, I was not very professional.
So are all of these blog sites on the pterosaurs?
Almost all of my websites are on pterosaurs. Anything you find that's from me is probably about living pterosaurs. Yeah.
My producer did a fast search on all the media outlets that we have access to, and we could not find one report from a credible media outlet on anyone being attacked by a pterosaur or a flying dragon in Canada.
Oh.
There are a few blog spots that mention it, but when it comes to credible media sources, not one.
Yeah, and we had that's mentioned by the author, Gerald McIsaac, that basically most people don't take the report seriously. They think that somehow some fanatic criminal for many years has been kidnapping people as they're walking at night along this particular road in their area, and they just assume it's just somebody but it's been going on for over a decade. People disappearing.
All right, I want to thank you, Jonathan, for joining us tonight. And X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour has been Jonathan Whitcomb. You know, UFOs, no proof. Ghosts, no proof. Bigfoot, no proof. Loch Ness Monster and lake monsters, no proof. Fairies, no proof. Now we have dragons. With all the different people around the world who are out there investigating one of these aspects of the paranormal, not to come across another aspect that is being investigated by other members of society, well, you do the math. It just does not make any sense at all. This is reality radio, where we take a real look into the impossible, the imaginable, the world of fantasy, and try to bring people back down to earth by asking hard-hitting questions. A lot of publishers don't like us, but you know what? Too bad. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.